This case is her story. This case is the story of Molly's disappearance and the story of Molly's murder.
This is the Molly Tibbetts missing persons case.
Molly Tibbetts.
Molly Tibbetts.
Despite search efforts over the last few days, there is still no sign of that missing woman.
This was something huge that was happening.
We have raised $172,000 that will be paid to you as soon as Molly is safely home.
We knew she was jogging. We knew she was abducted on the jog.
They had seen a figure that looked like a runner about the time and in the area where Molly would have been running on the night she disappeared.
A black Chevy Malibu that appeared to be circling the area. Who was driving that car?
Authorities have arrested a man for the murder of missing University of Iowa student Molly Tibbetts.
And he's brought in and he is questioned from you for 11 plus hours. Isn't that right?
Yes.
She comes out at one point and says, "This is definitely your killer, but I'm stuck here, guys. I'm gonna need some help."
You are f***ing up right now. You are f***ing up big time.
Who better to pick than an undocumented immigrant who doesn't speak the language?
You stabbed Molly Tibbetts. Isn't that right?
Your wife is in a bar. You said she's under Snatched.
This is what he's going to tell you. You're going to have to get out of that situation.
And I grabbed the gun.
Trying to find the first place to put a body.
No, sir.
The only thing they could do was kill him.
You want to say anything?
We, the jury, need to find the defendant.
Molly Tibbetts case, this 20-year-old missing University of Iowa student who was last seen on July 18th, last seen jogging in Brooklyn, Iowa.
We're trying to get the word out. We want Molly home safe.
So far we've been searching by air and foot both.
We just really hope that we can get her found and brought back home to the people that love her.
And I think everybody in the country has adopted Molly, so let's keep at it. Let's go get her.
5'2", approximately 120 pounds, brown eyes. There is up to a $320,000 reward. Beautiful young lady you see there in the football game.
So listening to this, it definitely hit close home to me. This was something huge that was happening, and it could potentially happen to me.
It has been 4 days since Molly Tibbetts disappeared. Despite search efforts over the last few days, there is still no sign of that missing woman.
We believe that Molly is still alive, and if someone has abducted her, we are pleading with you to please release her.
Everybody has a Molly in their life, a person that has affected them in a way that she affected everybody standing up here right now. And imagine if this was you, somebody had taken your Molly. Wouldn't you want to help? Wouldn't you want her back? How would you feel? Just do the right thing and, let her go.
My initial thought that came to my head, because it happens a lot, is when we have missing people, is some sort of drug overdose, some sort of mental illness due to drugs. Not knowing anything about Molly, that's kind of what I thought I was heading into.
But Agent Trent Valletta soon learned that theory did not fit Molly, seen here the day before she disappeared at the daycare center where she was working for the summer. At the University of Iowa, she was majoring in child psychology.
She was very loved on campus. She was probably one of the nicest humans that anybody had ever met. Nobody had a bad thing to say about her.
She doesn't fit our normal victim profile. It kind of gives you the hairs on your back kind of stand up when you suddenly realize, oh my goodness, did something really terrible happen here?
So authorities swarmed the town of Brooklyn, Iowa.
I think it's roughly 1,400 or 1,500 people. People still leave their doors unlocked.
And began to retrace Molly's steps before she disappeared, starting at the home of her boyfriend where she had been staying.
That evening on the 18th of July, she went for a run right around 7:30, 7:45 in the evening.
She was an avid runner, and that was pretty common for her to run in the evenings. She left the house and didn't come back.
She would have left home, run through town, and then gone
on a blacktop east of Brooklyn, which was one of her normal running routes.
She was in constant contact with her boyfriend Dalton, and when that contact suddenly ceased and there's no contact, the proverbial hand on the panic button was pressed. Picked up the phone and called the FBI because I was assuming we had an adult abduction, which in Iowa and I think even nationwide are incredibly rare.
The FBI brought in drones to scour the acres and acres of cornfields around the town.
What the FBI is doing right now is trying to prioritize leads.
And for 4 or 5 weeks, all those leads came up empty, and we really had nothing at that point in time.
We knew she was jogging. We knew she was abducted on the jog, but we didn't no witnesses to the abduction, no cameras video of the abduction.
But investigators then realized that Molly never went anywhere without her cell phone, even on her runs, and they were able to get her password.
It's amazing how simple things kind of escape us sometimes. So we just went to Walmart, bought an iPhone, entered her password, and we literally cloned her phone. So we had all that data.
And a way to track Molly's jogging route along County Road 385.
And so she's going at a speed of less than 10 miles an hour up until a point. Her phone stops for a couple minutes, and then you can see with the next pings at the cell phone tower that she's traveling at approximately 60 miles an hour. It told me that she's in a vehicle, that she was jogging, there was a pause in her movement, and then she's in a vehicle.
Which actually took us close to the location of abduction.
There's always the hope that you'll find the person alive. But as hours become days, become weeks, the hope that she'll be found alive becomes, less and less.
Every day I feel Molly's presence with me. Sometimes I just feel her sitting on my shoulder. Molly's lending me her strength every day, every night. And yes, I have my moments of complete meltdowns, but it is through this strength that is somehow, and I don't know how, being bestowed upon me, that I am able to get through every morning, every noon, every night.
We spin our wheels. We spin our wheels for several weeks. We developed suspects that none of us really felt good about. But because of the resources we had, we literally ran the leads into the ground. Doing background on Molly, she was telling all of her family members she was going to marry Dalton. She knew he was about to propose.
Every investigation involving a disappearance or a homicide, officers are going to start with the inner circle of the victim and move their way out. Was Dalton Jack a suspect? Yes, he was.
But text messages between Dalton and Molly suggested not everything was happy.
There was some allegations that Dalton had a brief relationship with another young woman, but ultimately Molly had forgiven Dalton for whatever had been going on.
And detectives were able to determine that Dalton had been 2 hours away in Dubuque at the time she was abducted.
He was working construction on a road crew, fixing a bridge at that time over the Mississippi River, where it would have been physically impossible for him to be in Brooklyn, so he was ruled out fairly quickly.
So it was back to the area, all along County Road 385.
Sometimes we were kind of chasing our tails looking in the wrong direction. But then the canvassing never stopped.
They found a video from a resident who actually had 4 different cameras on his house and garage that when some of the investigators were reviewing this footage, they had seen a figure that looked like a runner about the time and in the area where Molly would have been running on the night she disappeared.
Just a glimpse, but an important one.
So the investigators, they began to look at all of the cameras and noticed a black Chevy Malibu. It appeared to be circling the area just after Molly had jogged through that same area.
Going one way, then another, and then back again, all within a few minutes of Molly passing by.
So that really became the focus of the investigation, was figuring out who was driving that car, and it was the thing, really, that broke the case.
The car guys there, they're like, well, these are non-factory mirrors, and their chrome mirrors are non-factory, and it's non-factory door handle. But how on God's green earth are we gonna ever find that car?
But the very next day, the car was spotted by an off-duty sheriff's deputy on his way home.
Lo and behold, the Malibu's coming right at him. And he calls me and says, hey, Trent, that car we're looking for, I'm behind it now. What do you want me to do? Just follow him home and say, hey, we're just looking for Molly. Have you guys seen or heard anything?
His name was Christian Bahena Rivera, an undocumented immigrant from Mexico working on a large Iowa corporate farm. He said he spoke no English.
So I scrambled. I had to find a Spanish speaker. We were at the point where everybody was shutting down. We just thought we weren't never going to find her. So everybody was gone. Most of the FBI was gone.
The nearest bilingual officer he could find was Pamela Romero from the Iowa City Police Department.
She was older for a new cop, so she had some good life experience, but very limited experience in those types of interviews. So she would take a lot of breaks, and we would feed her questions, and she would keep us updated. But we'd literally put a rookie cop in one of the biggest interviews probably in the history of the state, and it was a gut call. It was a total gut call.
The interview began around 6 in the evening. It would go on for more than 11 hours.
He really didn't give us much. Didn't say he knew Molly. Said he had very little knowledge that she was even missing. Wasn't going to be helpful. He didn't just know anything. So we made the decision, well, what we'll do then is we'll show him a picture of his car right by Molly. Basically the still photo of her jogging and his car, then a minute later driving behind her.
Okay.
Once we gave him that, then he's like, oh yes, now I remember who that is. It was a constant evolution. He kept, what's very chilling was he actually said, oh yeah, by the way, I have her missing persons poster in my house. Which is your killer's trophy, right? That's when you know you got the right person.
But as the day turned to night, Agent Valletta still could not find a way to break him.
We kind of thought we were going to be done, or he was done talking to us, about to the point where he said he saw her, he thought she was hot, he turned around to look at her again, and then he couldn't find her, and then he left. That's kind of where we thought we were going to be done.
Hey, I'm going to hand that phone over to you.
The only card we had to play was the immigration status. I put him on the phone with ICE, we Mirandized him and just said, you're no longer free to go because of your immigration status. While he's on the phone, we are back to panic mode. What do we do now? How do we figure out where Molly is, because he's probably not going to talk anymore. That's when Pamela Romero comes up to us and says, hey, can I have one more shot? Can I have one more shot with this guy? He likes me, let me talk to him. So she goes back in. Everything changes.
It was now well past midnight at the sheriff's office in Montezuma, Iowa, and the interrogation of Christian Bahena Rivera was at a standstill.
There was, more than one occasion where he would kind of slump down in his chair, pull his hat down over his eyes, and appear to rest.
Officer Romero was in and out of the room, getting advice from lead investigator Trent Valletta.
She comes out at one point and says, this is definitely your killer, but I'm stuck here, guys. I'm gonna need some help.
Hey, Christian.
And it was your old school good cop, bad cop scene.
How are you feeling?
Lead investigator Trent Valletta and FBI agent Nick Potritz were going to turn up the heat.
Oh, and I understand that you're trying.
Ellos saben que estás tratando.
And because you have a bad problem.
Bahena Rivera had claimed he had a condition that caused him to black out and could not remember what happened to Molly.
I think it's the easy way out for people not trying to talk about how much of a monster they are. It's kind of a standard excuse for bad behavior. And so that's what Rivera says.
I'm trying to remember, but I'm trying for the memories to come back, to come out. But I know that I'm in trouble already, and if I know something, I'm gonna let you guys know.
We understand your problem because we've dealt with it before.
Ellos lo entienden porque andan.
You're not the first person that we've come across who's had that happen to them. Okay, Chris, you look at me now, okay? Just look at me. She's going to talk, but look at me, okay? It could be true that you don't remember everything. Do you understand that?
Puede ser verdad que no recuerdes todo.
Okay, but you do remember some things that we need to know.
Pero sí recuerdas algunas cosas que necesitas saber.
People that have this problem don't forget
Las personas que
everything.
tienen este problema no se olvidan de todo.
And I think you're scared.
Yo creo que tú tienes miedo.
Listen.
Escucha.
I think you're scared
Yo creo que tú tienes miedo.
because you know what happened
Porque tú
a
sabes
little
lo que
bit,
pasó. Un poquito te recuerdo.
but you're afraid to tell us.
Pero tienes miedo de decir.
And that's okay.
Y
And
eso
it's
está
okay.
bien.
It's okay to tell us.
I'm being nice to Rivera, very nice. I'm literally holding his hands, talking about integrity and how do you want to be perceived.
We have been around a long time.
Tienen
We are old.
experiencias.
We are old.
Ya están grandes, ya están
And
mayores.
we have sat across people that we don't like because they lie to us.
Y nos hemos sentado enfrente de personas que no nos quedamos bien porque nos han mentido.
And that's why we were happy now because you were being honest with us.
Pero por eso estamos ahorita contentos porque sabemos que tú estás siendo honesto con nosotros.
So we can get along.
Así que para llevarnos bien
And we can work together
y podemos trabajar juntos
to make sure that family gets their daughter back. What we know for sure
lo que ya sabemos, de seguro,
is that girl was in your car.
que esa muchacha estuvo en tu casa.
O estábamos junto a ella.
Yes, like I mentioned to you already, I only remember her jogging, running. I do not remember talking with her.
And then we basically had it set up that if he kept denying, Nick was just going to yell at him to stop playing games.
You are f***ing up right now. You are f***ing up big time. Stop f***ing up. Tell us the truth. He's getting mad at you. I'm getting close to getting mad. Christian, I can see in your eyes
Lo podemos mirar en tus ojos,
that there's something you're hiding from us.
que tú lo estás ocultando.
I can tell.
Lo podemos mirar.
And you know I'm right.
Y tú sabes que tenemos razón.
And it's really hard to tell me.
Sé que es difícil decirlo.
Because it's something you really wish never happened. But it's time. We have to go find that girl.
Pero ya es tiempo.
And you have to tell us what happened.
The good cop, bad cop routine seemed to have worked.
He wants to talk to me alone. I'm asking him, you're not going to lie to me?
He answers, I'm going to tell you everything I know.
You're going to tell me all you remember, all you know? Ya no va a haber más mentiras. Ya no va a haber juegos. No games, no lies.
Do the right thing, okay?
Haz las cosas bien.
Do the right thing.
Porque yo no quiero que ellos regresen, ¿ok?
He tells her, because I don't want them to come back.
But he basically said, look, I can't tell you guys, but I'll tell her, which means he wanted to tell Pamela. So we left, and then his story evolved again.
And then the two of them alone, speaking in Spanish. I do remember that I was fighting with her. I remember that I brought her into my car. She had blood. I remember that we were in corn. I remember that's where I put her.
I would certainly characterize it as a confession that he had been the one and only person responsible for Molly Tibbetts' death. And they now had the Christian Rivera telling him that, yes, I can take you to her.
Yeah, we're about at 4:35 in the morning at that point. I remember just being covered in mud, crawling through these Iowa cornfields. You know, Rivera actually pointed out exactly where she's at.
She's covered in corn stalks. The thing that is the characteristic that stands out is she had very colorful running shoes, and those were visible.
Her clothes scattered about, the position of the badly decomposed body, indicating there had been a sexual assault.
Authorities have arrested a man for the murder of missing University of Iowa student Molly Tibbett.
24-year-old Christian Rivera faces a first-degree murder charge.
He had led them to Molly's body. Her blood and DNA were found in the trunk of his car. And he had essentially confessed. The case seemed ironclad until prosecutors learned there was a problem with the Miranda warning given to Bahena Rivera during the interrogation. Nothing on this tape could be used at trial.
Well, we are about to hear the opening statements in this monumental case. There are a lot of eyeballs on what is happening right now. This is a number of difficult issues, particularly about the undocumented immigrant issue.
And that issue had brought even more attention to the case, as politicians across the country had used Christian Bahena Rivera's undocumented immigration status as a campaign talking point.
You heard about today with the illegal alien coming in, very sadly, from Mexico.
Did not help our case, no. From our perspective, that was something that was somewhat of a minefield and not in any way a benefit to us.
Mr. Claver, on behalf of the state of Iowa, you may give your opening.
Thank you, Your Honor. Molly Tibbetts. This case is her story. This case is a story of Molly's disappearance and the story of Molly's murder. Ladies and gentlemen, this is what I expect the evidence in this case to show. The first is a video. The video that shows the defendant's black Chevy Malibu in the time and the area where Molly was last seen. Second aspect of the state's evidence for you to focus on is Molly's blood in the defendant's Malibu. And the third are the defendant's admissions. His admissions that he saw Molly, that he found her attractive, that he ran alongside her, that Molly threatened to call the police, that he became angry, that he fought with Molly. Ladies and gentlemen, when you examine this evidence together, there can be no other conclusion than that the defendant killed Molly Tibbetts.
Thank you, Mr. Claver. Does the defense elect to give their opening at this time?
Bahena Rivera was represented by the husband-wife team of Chad and Jennifer Fries.
Your Honor, we will defer our opening to the conclusion of the state's case.
So it was straight to the state's case, and on day one, the prosecution called Molly's boyfriend, Dalton Jack. He said to deal with his heartbreak, he had enlisted in the Army.
I am in the 82nd Airborne Division as a sergeant, team leader, I guess, would be my official MTOD position.
How would you describe Molly's personality?
She was always happy, bubbly, goofy. She just liked to have fun, pretty much, I guess.
Now the prosecution needed to establish Dalton's alibi, that he was in Dubuque.
What did you do whenever you got back to the hotel in Dubuque on July 18th around 6 p.m.?
Just drank beers with the guys and hung out.
Okay. Did you come back to Brooklyn for any reason?
No.
The next day, so Thursday, let's move to that, July 19th, did you send Molly a message in the morning?
Yes, I sent her the same good morning message that I always send her.
And what is that good morning message?
Good morning, beautiful. And then like a kissy face or something like that.
Okay. Did you receive any response from her?
No.
But on cross-examination, the defense strategy became clear. Dalton was a young man with dark secrets.
You also told officers on that same interview information that you'd withheld before, right?
Correct.
And that information that you withheld before was that you'd had a relationship with a woman other than Molly, right?
Correct.
What did you tell officers the reason you withheld that information?
I didn't deem it necessary.
You didn't deem it necessary?
I didn't think that it was pertinent to the case.
So you didn't think it was pertinent to tell law enforcement officers that you having an affair on your true love was not pertinent to the case, right?
I was 19 years old.
Explain to me what you mean by that.
I was 19 years old. It was the beginning of the relationship, and I screwed up one time. Molly knew about it, and we got past it.
Let's talk about you, young man. You consider yourself to have a temper?
Not anymore.
You did, though, at one time?
Yes.
Pretty angry young man?
When I was about 17, 16, yes.
Tell me about the temper of the 16, 17-year-old Dalton Jack.
It was not good. It was short-fused.
Like to fight?
Yes.
And I think they were trying to poke the bear, so to speak. They were trying to get him irritated and to show that, you know, it's possible that Dalton was the killer.
Around the time that Molly was abducted or died, you told her a number of times that you thought you were depressed, right?
Correct.
So things weren't all rosy between you and Molly in the last 30 days before her abduction, were they?
No.
He was drugged through the mud. Dalton was drugged through the mud. He was literally sitting 15 feet away from a guy that brutally raped and stabbed his love of his life to death.
State of Iowa may call its next witness.
Iowa City police officer Pamela Romero had conducted the 11-hour interrogation of Bahena Rivera and a follow-up round of questioning in the cornfield where the Miranda warning had been correctly stated.
Now, did you have a discussion with the defendant about the appearance of the runner, female runner that he saw?
Yes, I asked her what he thought of the female runner first, and his answer was, I found her attractive.
Did he ever use any other term other than attractive to describe the runner that he saw?
He stated at one point that he thought that she was hot.
And she described how Bahena Rivera later took her and other officers to this cornfield and pointed to the location of Molly's body.
He remembers that there was blood. He told me that he took her out of the car, put her on top of his shoulder, carried her inside into the cornfield, laying her down, covering her with corn leaves, and leaving right away.
Did you ever then press him then on more details? How did you go about doing that?
His answer was, I brought you here, didn't I? So that means that I did it. I don't remember how I did it.
Pamela Romero, our officer, really hit a grand slam at trial. She did a phenomenally good job in recounting his interview, which is a difficult thing for a witness to do without a recording being played.
But on cross-examination, the defense did play speeded up stretches of the video with no audio, showing their client appearing to be asleep.
He fell asleep multiple times during breaks of this interview, isn't that right?
According to the recording, yes. During my presence, no.
This man, he works a tough job for 12 hours a day, 12 out of the 14 days a week, isn't that right?
That is what he told me, yes.
And then he's brought in and he is questioned from you on and off for 11 plus hours, isn't that right?
The interview went for 11 hours, yes.
And it was not until the very end, the last couple of hours, that he was willing to give you really any information. Is that right?
That's not the way that I took it.
Now, ma'am, you testified that you don't know anything about a false confession, is that right?
Yes.
You don't know what the definition of a false confession is?
No, I do not.
You don't understand that concept whatsoever?
No, not at the moment, I do not.
Having planted the seeds of doubt about a possible false confession, raising questions about Molly's boyfriend Dalton, the defense was now ready to play its final card.
We have a shocker for you in Iowa in the Christian Bahena Rivera trial. The man accused of killing Molly Tibbetts.
Defense calls Christian Bahena Rivera.
The prosecution finished their case yesterday, and today the defense began their case.
And the defense called Molly Tibbetts' boyfriend, Dalton Jack, back to the stand for another effort to imply he might have been the killer.
At any point in the 12 months before Molly disappeared, did you ever tell her that you realized you were clinically insane?
I don't remember that at all either.
Did you mention to Molly that you have a temper?
I don't remember.
So he showed Dalton text messages he had sent to Molly saying just that.
You recall on October 30, 2017, you and Molly's relationship kind of hit a real bump, didn't it?
I don't recall that either. No.
That's when she told you she was moving in with friends.
Then yeah, I remember.
And that upset you?
Yes, it did.
You told her you were angry about that?
Yes.
She was ditching you?
Yes.
You don't recall telling Molly that you had a temper?
No.
You don't recall saying that's what makes you dangerous?
No.
After a break for lunch, the defense sprung the surprise they had planned all along.
Defense calls Christian Bahena Rivera.
The defense hid it from us, which they can do. Even in their opening statement, they made no mention that he was going to testify.
Sir, I'm going to bring up on your screen, that is Defendant's Exhibit F.
Photos of Bahena Rivera and his family.
The jury was able to see the defendant. They were able to get photos in. Actually, they were over our objection. So it personalized him to that point. So I think, you know, that was one of the things I was concerned about.
And then Bahena Rivera offered his version of what happened, showing where he said 2 men in ski masks and sweaters with weapons forced him to drive, and where they passed Molly Tibbetts as she was running.
What happened next?
One of them got out of the car.
What happened next?
I've heard them opening the trunk.
What happened next?
I just heard a movement in the car, and then that the trunk closed.
And then, he testified, he was ordered to drive to the cornfield where Molly's body was eventually found, and the 2 masked men disappeared.
Did you look in the trunk?
Yes.
What did you see?
A body.
Was that the body of Molly Tibbetts?
Yes.
What did you do next?
Well, I stayed there a couple of minutes thinking what to do. And then I decided to take the body out.
Why didn't you call the police, sir?
Because I was scared.
Will the jury think it's fabulous, confabulated, or just an outright lie? Will they feel manipulated?
It's one of the biggest fish stories I've ever seen a defendant put on in a criminal trial.
He was unbelievable. Here you come up with this completely different story, you know, nearly 3 years later.
You claim that you went to a cornfield where Molly Tibbetts' body was placed with 2 other men.
Yes.
Whenever you left the cornfield, you left alone?
Yes.
The other 2 men that were there, did they just walk back?
They ran towards the road.
So they ran towards the road and just disappeared?
I didn't see them again. I don't know where they went.
The 2 men that you say you were with, you don't know who they are?
That's correct.
But you just happen to remember that one of them used the name Jack.
Yes.
the last name of Molly's boyfriend, Dalton Jack.
You stabbed Molly Tibbetts. Isn't that right?
No.
You're the one that did that. Isn't that true?
An answer.
You alone took Molly Tibbetts into the corn. Isn't that right?
Yes.
The two men that you mentioned didn't help you do that. Is that right?
Correct.
And you left her there for nearly 5 weeks, correct?
Correct.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen of the jury. You've heard a case and evidence about a young woman who went for a run on July 18th of 2018, and she never came home. She was confronted by this man. She crossed paths with him, and it ended her life. She was attacked brutally by him. She was stabbed repeatedly by him. Can you imagine what that was like for her? 5 weeks, Molly's body laid in that cornfield. And you know who knew about that? One man. One man knew, and he is here. His name is Christian Bahena Rivera. I want to break for just a second and talk about, just briefly, this man's testimony yesterday. Right? All of a sudden now we have these two men, right? He gets up and gives us this different version of what happened. You know what the problem is with it? It doesn't make sense. Why would this happen? Because he's angry? Because he wants to have some sort of relationship with her? Because he finds her hot or attractive? Goodness. That's what happened. Molly's no longer on this planet because of the defendant. All of the evidence here points to one verdict. The defendant, Christian Bahena Rivera, is guilty of murder in the first degree. That is your verdict. Thank you.
You don't decide this case based upon emotions. You don't decide this case with emotions tugging at your heartstrings. And you have to ask yourself if this crime could have been committed by 5'7" 125-pound Christian Bahena in that short time frame. Could he have overpowered this woman? Could he have stabbed her 9 times, tossed her in the trunk, and then headed south? That makes no sense. You saw Christian Bahena's testimony. He sat there yesterday, and he gave you his version of the events. It makes every bit as much sense as the state's theory that an undocumented immigrant runs up alongside Molly Tibbetts on a highway in broad daylight, gets angry, and decides to stab her. Absolutely does. We think Christian's confession or his statement was inaccurate. It was false. You see here, he fell asleep 3 different times. Who better to pick than an undocumented immigrant who doesn't speak the language, who has nobody here to speak of to help him out? Folks, there is serious doubt in this case. Serious doubt. Christian Bahena Rivera has not had the case against him proven beyond a reasonable doubt. And the only verdict that you can come up with under these facts and what you heard right there is not guilty. Thank you.
The jury was out for some 7 hours, over 2 days.
I remember that day just waiting and waiting. Why is it taking so long?
The longer it goes, the more worried you get, and everybody's nervous. You don't really look at anybody, talk to anybody. until the jury comes in.
At this time, Mr. Bahina, I'm going to ask that you rise along with your attorneys, please. And I would ask that the court attendant read the jury's verdict.
We, the jury, find the defendant, Christian Bahina Rivera, guilty of the crime of murder in the first degree.
I mean, we had a situation where a client gave a statement, and he had her DNA in the trunk, and he led him to the body. That's all pretty incriminating evidence.
Mr. Bahina Rivera, you and you alone forever changed the lives of those who love Molly Tibbetts. And for that, you and you alone will receive the following sentence. A lifetime sentence with no eligibility for parole.
I think part of her legacy is the effect that her disappearance and her life that was cut short had on the nation and world.
A statue dedicated to Molly Tibbetts and the artwork of children she had hoped to one day work with are now on display near the place where she was killed.
Seeing those kids painting and sewing quilts, this is important to us. It's exactly how she would have painted it, I think.
Molly's parents hope their daughter will be remembered not for how she died, but for how she lived.